Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Talking Niagara this morning. Good morning, Mike. So I changed everything to orange this morning. Orange bands, orange, goldenish, in order for Truth and Reconciliation Day. All right.
Truth and Reconciliation Day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
Welcome, everybody, to Truth and Reconciliation Day. So this is your morning talk show. We're covering politics and news that impacts Niagara and you. Okay. National Truth and Reconciliation Day here in Canada. Actually, one of the things I do know is going to be happening up and down the country here is whether you're open or closed. The purpose about this day is supposed to be about talking about what has happened to the Indigenous people.
Yeah, I don't know how universally accepted this is. I'm sure that the children are learning it in schools. The thing is, if it used to, a lot of these things used to take on the victim narrative big time, and I think we're a little bit past that right now. The reconciliation part is the part that I think is the best part, because when you sell the victim narrative, you can only sell that so long, and yet, you were victims. The whole Indigenous folks were victims of with the, and this really comes with the schools basically. And how badly the children were treated. They're taken off, they're away from their parents and put into residential schools in order to help them to give them a leg up in the modern world. That was bad thinking. But if you think the way they thought, they were doing everybody a big favor.
Yeah.
Once they started that up, then there was no turning back. They didn't improve them. They didn't investigate them. They didn't look into them to see how well the children were treated or anything. Once it began, everybody kind of accepted it. That's the way it is. That's good for the Indigenous people. We can get their kids out of the reservations and get them on into these schools. We can teach them properly, and they'll be well fit for moving on. And that, of course, didn't happen at all.
Yeah.
Some of them.
In some of the schools, I think they reinforced. I think in some of the schools they seem to reinforce how different these people were and how how they should be expected to be mistreated.
I don't think Indigenous people were able to become citizens for a very long time. I think it was into the 20s or something.
That was part of the problem. Yeah.
You got to remember the attitudes, though. So I'm not making excuses for how the white people viewed this whole thing. It was originally, and unfortunately, a guy like Ryerson is in the black books now. They're taking his name off of colleges and street names. And that was really the wrong thing to do, because he came up with this particular idea. It was never enacted in his time. He never had any kind of oversight over it. He just felt it was a good idea. And but he also worked with the schools all over Ontario and stuff and improving them. And he came up with this idea of the residential school thing. But if he lived, you don't know how that would have turned out if he lived to actually direct it the way he actually saw it. It might not have been as bad as it was. So Ryerson comes up with this idea 16 years after his death. They first implement it. And then the governments never really improve or look upon it thereafter. They supply money. 60% of the kids are taken care of by the Catholic Church. The Anglican Church kicks in, and the other churches kick in as well. We find that there are all kinds of abuses, but the number one main thing is the kids are taken away from their parents and their community. And how do you fix that? Now, obviously, there were a lot of kind-hearted people there trying to teachers, etc. But also there are the worst of all, because who's going to be taking a teacher's job way up in northern isolated Ontario someplace? So there's all kinds of issues with this that should be sorted out, but it was a wrong thing to do, but they thought it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And among the people that put it on the blacklist is a guy like Ryerson, who had the idea but never lived long enough to see it implemented. And you don't know what form it would have taken if he was alive when it was implemented. He may have been able to adjust it here and there. The problem, of course, this is a colonial type of attitude. You're not the same as us, so we're going to fix that. But honestly speaking, they saw Indigenous people now living in a modern world and completely unprepared for it. They didn't know how to read. They didn't know how to write. They lived in primitive conditions, or primitive compared to the white people. So they thought they'd do them a big favor.
Yeah.
And leapfrog them into the modern world by taking all the children away and put them into residential school, and then never really looking at the results of that, which is the biggest problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they had over 100 years to look at this situation and never fixed it.
Yeah. And it's that whole situation, that whole thing about taking them away didn't actually fix the situation. And I think we recognize that today. But let's be honest, when it comes down to what happened, we'll probably never know. Not the 100% truth of it. We will know certain things that certain people tell us as their stories, and that's an important aspect. What people tell their story, that our native population tell their stories, and that we listen to that story.
Yes, that's the truth. And it's not a black and white thing. Generally speaking, overall, the residential schools were not a good thing.
Yeah.
But we'll also remember overall.
In hindsight, we can agree that, right? In hindsight, we can agree.
Yeah.
But, I understand that probably with Egerton Ryerson, he had looked at the state of the country, and he felt there was a certain sector of the population that the government wasn't serving properly.
Well, he had fear for their future,
yeah,
and tried to address it. And his ideas were implemented after he died, but they didn't implement them well, obviously, and they didn't adjust them, or they didn't keep a really close idea. Well, for instance, they would gather up the kids and give them the Catholic Church and say, "Here, take care of them." And then they just kind of left it to the Catholic Church, told them these are the standards of education we expect.
Yeah.
And then the Catholic Church would then take it over. Well, the Catholic Church would then put their own religion into it. They would teach the kids religion. They would, try to sort of make little Catholics out of them.
And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with teaching religion. It's just that it was being taught to peoples that didn't necessarily want to hear it.
Well, there were kids, right? And basically, the whole situation was to educate the kids, to bring them up to the standard of everyone else in the country, and that should have been their concentration. But also remember that all the bodies and things like that, we don't hear anything about that anymore, do we? About the burials and the bodies and the babies found under churches. None of that is not coming up anymore, because no one can find anything. There is no evidence. And there was rumor after rumor after rumor, but it was all squashed. So you're not going to see a whole lot more about the outrage of having Indian children buried in mass somewhere close to a residential school. It's just not happening. And we have to put this into perspective. The outrage got a little bit too much outrage, and because rumors circulated and things got out of hand. And the next thing you know, everybody was a super monster. And when they really looked deeply, when the Catholic Church was brought to its knees about this and the Pope had to come, when they looked really closely at the records, objectively, they did not find anywhere near the abuse that they were accused of. All kinds of abuses, of course, but the level of abuse was cannot be found, and like the killing of children and the raping and all that. Yeah, all the sex abuse and a lot of that stuff did happen. The number one thing that was bad about it was taking children away from their parents and taking them into a school.
In fact, you could have given the same education based where the children were with their parents and in their local communities.
You would have thought so, but it was very, very difficult because of the isolated situations of the indigenous people over there. And we look at we really don't know. We really don't know how much of an effect this may have really had, because you take a lot of people that were at the turn of the century were illiterate, despite the fact that the kids went to residential schools and didn't like it. Maybe they turned out to be more literate. Maybe it did do something. Who knows? But and anyway, we have to put this into perspective. It was a bad thing. It was poorly thought out. But this same thing happened in the United States. They called them Indian boarding schools. And the same thing happened in Australia with the Aborigines there.
Yeah.
They did exactly the same thing. They did exactly the same thing because, as we say, the road of good intentions leads to hell, or something like that. What is that phrase?
All too frequently, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I think it is. Yeah, it's the other way around, right? Okay, so one of the things, of course, that's happened as a result is that what we do know is going to be going on today is that what is open and closed, there's no courts open at all anywhere in the land because they're all closed. Some city and town run services, including city halls, administrative offices, libraries, community centers, will be closed, but it would be dependent upon, from what I can see about the Niagara region, it would be dependent upon the city you're in.
I don't think anything should be closed.
And that's actually a fair argument out there. There's a lot of people that are saying it shouldn't be closed. Tourist attractions may be closed, and things like schools are going on, malls, shops, movie theaters, breweries, wineries, etc., are all running tours today. But check ahead.
Yeah, well, anything like government will be closed, but anything that has to do with the capitalist swine making money is open.
You socialist pig, you socialist pig.
I'm a large C communist. What are you talking about?
I knew that. I just wasn't brave enough to make that allegation. You're Karl Marx's best friend, aren't you?
Yeah. Oh, I just I read the other day, I think yesterday, about Lenin's directive to the to eliminate the kulaks. The kulaks were a prosperous set of peasants. The Russian population was like 90% peasant.
Yeah.
But there was when the peasants were finally freed in 1880s, some of them became very successful farmers.
Yeah.
And those successful farmers were thought to be an enemy of the communist revolution. They showed that a bit of capitalism would work even for a peasant. So they went around and thought of the kulaks as an enemy, almost like a disease, and they would go around and hang them, and burn down their stuff. It was amazing that Lenin ordered them to be hanged in places where everybody could see them. Like all they did was become prosperous, but Lenin felt that they were kind of a disease. It's amazing.
Well,
the orders that came
that
down.
Of course is what led to the eventual concept of the planned farm and the what's it called
5-year plan.
The 5-year plans and all the farms. What were those
collective farms?
Collective farming, yes, that they used to do. Yeah. All right. Anyway, but let's get away from that. Okay, so check on things that will be open and closed today. There's a lot of discussion about whether on Truth and Reconciliation Day offices should be open or closed. Our office is open today, and it's been legal tonight. We'll have a Truth and Reconciliation theme. We're going to be talking a little bit about some Indigenous laws, a little bit about what people think about Truth and Reconciliation Day. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So moving on, former Port Colborne Meals on Wheels director was charged with fraud. $100,000 was allegedly taken from the organization.
I don't know how they screen the people for this. And this is everybody's big nightmare, isn't it? When people, you find resistance to charity a lot of times because of suspicion around charity. I can tell you of an incident. You remember when the Salvation Army was robbed of its toys and stuff many years ago? Well, they were never able to get that back into, even though they recovered them all, they were never able to get that back. People donating like that anymore because of the press it got. And people thought, well, it's not worth it. Somebody's going to steal it.
Yeah.
And here, are you going to give the Meals to Wheels now? After reading this, the $80,000 of Meals to Wheels went into. There wasn't enough protections against. First of all, you do not think of a charitable service stealing.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way we could do it here.
Or people working for the charitable organization. You think of them as, well, in fact, probably most of us think of them as as well-positioned volunteers rather than employees, for one.
So Anita Postma, 55, a former executive director of the agency, admitted to taking money from the not-for-profit organization for unauthorized purchases over 18-month period. She couldn't help it. Now, of course, they have some baloney type of defense. Oh, she's been under a lot of pressure, blah, 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 or there's mental health problems. In fact, she says the accused effectively placed the organization into a financial crisis and jeopardized its existence, Assistant Crown Attorney said. Postma breached the trust of so many that day of her termination. She went on the day of her termination. She went online through PayPal and effectively defrauded Meals of Wheels of an additional $5,500 on the day she got dumped.
Yeah. And the thing is that has, we're talking about a charitable organization here, an organization that does good in the community. But you think about that in any organization, how somebody There we go. Right.
Oh, we're back again. Okay.
Yeah. My computer just has this situation right now. I think I'm going to be taking it into the shop fairly soon if this doesn't sort itself out, because it just keeps collapsing. Yeah, what I was just saying there, it's problematic, for any organization to lose money, to have somebody rip it off. Right, it doesn't help anybody to have that organization be ripped off. And typically, if you worked in a workplace like a store or something off like that, and you ripped off $100,000, you'd probably close off that store.
Yes, and the penalties are not that bad. A friend of mine's relatives, a buddy of mine's girlfriend's relatives, they had a store, and somebody were able to steal over $200,000 worth before they caught her. But she's not on the hook for any of that because her earning ability is not high enough to pay it back, and she never served any jail time. She just kind of went on a kind of a parole kind of a thing. It was a super, super lenient sentence. It was as if she didn't do the crime at all, and super, super lenient. And the people who got beat for, and they try to go after her, some kind of civil thing where the person who had stolen the stuff would pay at least a little bit every month or something. But the court said no, because she didn't have the means of making that much money. She needed all the money she had to live, so there would be no penalty. Isn't that bizarre, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, in fact, certain people like this, I can't have words for them. The only thing I can think of, that I can say, and I'm putting this in bare raw emotions, a person like this, doing what they did, and Mike says it. What a scumbag, ripping off this and making it untrustworthy. Yeah, a person like this, irrespective of the organization, irrespective of what you feel about that organization, a person like this basically should really learn to live on. They should never be working again. They should, their job, what the careers they work in. No, they should not be permitted to work again. They should be ostracized and hung out to dry. Because basically,
certainly not.
No,
she's going to have to go to work.
Sympathy for anybody like that. Yeah.
Well, I want to know what the sentence is going to be, because if she doesn't draw jail time, what's the point? She's just come up and said, okay, I got away with this. I pretended to have some sort of mental health issues. Oh, they're going to let me off. And I said, weekends at home, like Jeffrey Epstein all over again. I'm not, kind of super weak punishments compared to the crime. What's she going to do next time? She's going to be a little bit more careful next time, isn't she, when she steals the money?
Well,
the problem is she's a criminal now. She's a criminal now, and she should go to jail. She should drop, because look at the damage she's done to Meals on Wheels.
Yeah.
When a charity gets robbed, people, a certain amount of the segment, do not give to that charity anymore because they feel it's a vulnerable charity. They feel that somebody's been robbing from it, and they don't want their money to be robbed. So they pick another charity or don't pick a charity at all.
Well, that's actually often the way. I think people who've been giving to something like Meals on Wheels, like, why would I do that anymore? Who else?
Yeah, seriously. Their shift goes away from how much good they're doing to wondering, if I give them $100, how much of that $100 will have to actually see a meal? Well, you're going to have a little bit of administration that have to be taken off the top. So you're lucky to get 80% of it actually done. into the field. But if
Well,
people are stealing, how much of it is actually going to meals? And that's the way people think. You know, they got problems over there, I'm not going to send that money there.
Yeah, it costs to run a service anyway, right? We know that, and probably 10 or 20 cents on the dollar goes to the administration, and that's normal. But
including Postma, she was a director. She drew a salary.
Yeah, exactly. You know, but ripping the organization off. So she's taking way more than she deserves, right? She
got paid. She doesn't deserve anymore. If you want, she doesn't like it, go find another job.
In fact, I was having. I know somebody who had one of these jobs. Knew somebody who had one of these jobs, right? She used to give half her salary back to the organization.
Well, yeah, some people are retired or something like that. Yeah, they do. You know, some people really believe in it and all that.
Yeah. It was a few years ago, but you know, I couldn't believe how much she was giving and how basically she just almost seemed to give all of it away.
Yeah. So anyway, we don't expect anybody to do that because most people need whatever they make to live.
Oh, I know.
Maybe she didn't need everything she had, so she gave it back. But in this particular case, the woman was drawing a salary.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
stealing.
It's the end stealing. You see, a salary, you know, they're saying they determined more than $118,000 was taken from the organization. That when you think about how that affects the most needy in our society, that is what's most disgusting about this.
Well, you know what? Not long ago, somebody from Meals on Wheels bumped into me. I think when I was at Staples there, and they said, "Oh, Kiwanis, Stanford Kiwanis, you should get used to Meals to Wheels." I says, "Yeah, I saw that in some of the paperwork." It says, "Well, maybe you can again." They said, "You know, this is true," and I said, "Okay, I'll bring it up at a meeting." But how am I going to sell it now?
Yeah. That's a very difficult sell, and I know that you guys do wonderful work in Kiwanis, as do people like Lions and other organizations. Yet, how can you possibly do something? You know, give to an organization like this now? Is, you know, everybody's kind of got to be concerned.
Well, what it does is it puts a bad light on all. Of course, almost all charities are done very well, but once you get one or two of them getting nailed like this, bad press, then it reverberates out because people, why, you know, can I really trust the dollars I'm giving to this place? I want to, but you know, anyone who's given to a charity and found that it's being ripped off really feel brutalized because they've taken their money that they could have spent on something else, given it to a charity, and only found out that somebody's abused it, and that makes them feel not only angry but used, and they don't want to feel that again.
Yeah,
so
that's one thing.
All charities become suspect thereafter.
Yeah, exactly. One of the good things, though, is that one of the things I've done is we give regularly, not as regularly as we should do. Now I'm kicking myself about that, but we usually give some, you know, bags of rice and bags and you know, stuff that they need to the soup kitchen, right? But in some respects, it's better that I believe in some respects it's better to be giving stuff than, you know, what they need rather than money.
That depends. That's very, very, like in the situation where we're in now with the school kids, a lot of organizations go around and stuff backpacks. That's all well, but if you talk to the schools and the teachers themselves, they kind of like that, you know, but what they say is what they do when donations come in of materials for schools, they get way too much of one thing and not enough of another. They don't consult the schools to ask them what they want. So you get all these back to school drives going on, and the school gets what they get, and they don't get to ask what they need. And the one that we're doing right now is opposite of that. We collect the money, and then we tell the schools, you got X amount of money, go buy what you want, what you need, right? And so to facilitate that situation. So when they have a food drive, pay very close attention to what they ask for, because what'll happen is they'll get way too much of one thing over another. They'll get a lot of really bad breakfast cereals like Cocoa Krispies or Tutti or whatever they're called, Fruit Loops. That's really bad for the kids. So they'll get stuff like that. So pay attention to what they ask for.
Yeah.
And then and contribute that.
Yeah. Okay. So absolutely, because in fact, actually, that's exactly what we do when it comes to the soup kitchen. We look at and they have on their website what they look, the stuff that they actually need all the time. So we look at that and make sure we bring something that is on their list.
And that's another thing. The soup kitchen, though, is, I'm going to play devil's advocate here, so remember that. Yeah, Are they just enablers? Are they just enablers? Soup kitchen, and Project Share. Are they just enablers?
Well, that's a fair question, because in fact, one of the problems that we have in our society right now is that we've got too many people who are poor and needy, and should we be having that? Pretty well all societies over time have had poor and needy people, but does that mean, do we have a situation where we've changed something in our society that we've got too many poor and needy? The question about something like soup kitchens is that they don't actually stop anybody who shows up from taking away a meal. One day, as I said before, there's a gentleman in the BMW showed up. That was when we were dropping off rice or whatever. Gentleman in the BMW showed up. I'm not questioning that, because hey, anybody can lose their job.
I question it, but I question more when you go to Project Share and a car pulls up and there's alcohol in it and they're smoking one cigarette after another. Where do they get the money for all of that?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So they got enough money for booze and tobacco. Of course, they're going to hit the Project Share. Anyway, that was just a devil's advocate question.
I know.
I don't really like, along with the homeless and the addicted, I don't really see any solutions coming anytime soon. All I see is these agencies ballooning in need over and over, more and more and more.
And when
the soup kitchen can't feed enough people, the Project Share cannot serve enough people. And when they expand, there's just more and more people coming to their, to get stuff.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem that we have in our society right now. And I'm also very concerned about the fact that, within a few years, I think you're going to find the average wage of people in Canada is going to be fairly close to the minimum wage.
I don't know. It's anyway, it's a very, very difficult situation. The fact of the matter is the need grows.
Yeah.
And when you get somebody like Meals on Wheels stealing, Ms. Postman, I hope you go to jail.
What's going on here?
I don't know. I can't see you, so the screen looks much better now.
Yeah, I don't know. It looks like my camera's gone off. I got to a certain point and I don't know. I got to something, and okay, I'm going to fix the camera situation. I can do that.
Well, all I say is that, like, it's a very unfortunate thing that someone would steal from charity like Meals on Wheels. And I don't know, what else do we have then?
Yeah. Right, moving on. Yeah. So the next one that we have is Poilievre is saying Christians might be the number one victims of hate-based violence.
I don't believe it. Do you?
I'm not a well, the thing is, I think religion, it's easy to say this, right? And probably in Canada, the vast majority of people are Christian. At least,
Christian backward. I think very
yeah,
few Canadians are actually practicing Christians.
yeah. I'm not talking about what they practice. I'm talking about what they are open, outwardly, what their origins are.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, what the facts tell us is that most of religious crime in the last little while has been directed towards Jews and Muslims. Jews more than Muslims. There are more synagogues. There are more Jews, more well-established Jewish neighborhoods and things like that than are Muslim. But basically, that's what the facts of this article say.
Yeah.
There has been attacks against Catholics. Well, we know why that is, and that's because of the pedophile thing, right? So there's been an outrage against Catholic pedophilia and the pedophilia among the priesthood. So, of course, there's going to be outrage against the Catholic Church. Once that settles down, I don't think you're going to find a whole lot of attacks against churches. There is church burnings and other things that have happened. There are in the residential schools. Remember, one of the things they did was burn down a church as an action against the memory of residential schools. They unwisely burned down a church as a protest of the colonialization that happened. So there you go. There's a situation there. It wasn't really directed towards Christians per se, but it was directed towards a bigger issue. How many churches, like we found that the Mormon church in the United States was attacked in Michigan. Other churches have been attacked. The Catholic Church has been attacked in the United States as well. So they're saying that there's this huge fluster of attacks against Christians in the United States. I'm not so sure that it is. You have a lot of these like weirdo guys, like isolated types, like the guy that struck the Mormon church in Michigan was disliked the Mormon church, just the Mormon church, not any other Christian churches. Okay. He went to destroy it. He freaked out, but he seems to have been he was a U.S. Marine and a Trump supporter, according to the signs that were on his fences. So he's a Trump Pence support kind of guy who is a military guy that then goes and attacks a church. Is the complete opposite to what the Trump administration says are the type of people that are attacking churches, who he says are left-wing fanatics. I don't know. There are schools being attacked too. I would say more schools are being attacked than churches. What is it? I don't know. Schools were the same day that Charlie Kirk got killed. There was a guy shooting up a school in Colorado, not far from that site. So, in Colorado. So, what is it? What's going on out there? Is there really a whole lot of anti-Christian violence going on out there?
Mm-hmm.
We saw anti-Hindu violence. Recently, we found anti-Sikh violence. We found anti-Islamic, and of course, always there's always somebody, throwing a rock at a synagogue or something like that. That's a well-established hatred. So I'm asking, does anybody? As far as vandalism or just breaking into it to steal stuff, I think Poilievre is overstating this. I think he's trying to get a point drummed up among the ultra conservatives. Go ahead.
Well, okay. So here's the thing: that we live in primarily a Christian society. We can't deny that there are more Christian churches, and probably the majority of the population, even if they're not practicing Christians, hail from some form of Christian background. So, and what I'd like to figure out here is he talking about people who generally like atheists are opposed to churches generally, or are we talking about crimes against churches? And there are probably more Christian churches than there are any other types of churches, so crimes against churches will probably be higher than crimes against mosques and synagogues, etc., and any other form of temples. So does that mean, but there's a whole heap of difference between that kind of thing that we've just been talking about there and hate crimes, attacks on churches that are hate crimes.
Well, we know that there are going to be hate crimes against Catholics because of the pedophilia that was going on, right? Years and years of pedophilia and child abuse that were perpetuated by Catholic priests. Of course, there's going to be an outrage, particularly when they try to keep the story down, and they did, and they're still trying to keep the story covered up, and nobody wants to know about it. Still, it keeps coming up, and of course, when the information about that finally came out, and the Catholics were finally taking responsibility for it. Well, the Catholic heads of the Catholic Church were finally taking responsibility for it. Of course, there was a whole lot of hate crimes directed toward the Catholic Church. What do you expect? You're going to be enraged people, right? I'm sure there was a whole bunch of attacks on mosques after 9/11. You know what I mean? So that now that Netanyahu is murdering a whole bunch of children in Gaza, there are probably backlashes against the Jewish community, which doesn't really make sense. None of these make sense because they just don't. But anyway, in people's minds, they do.
Yeah, but again, so 2023. So the majority of hate crimes in 2023 reported as targeting a religion by was reported to the police, were directed at Jews 70%, Muslims 16%, and they recorded 1,284 hate crimes targeting religion that year, a sharp rise of 67% from 22. And they're basically saying Jewish hate crimes was 900 and Muslim hate crimes was 211. Now, essentially, remember, 23 was before the start of the, October 23, of course, was the start of the current war in Gaza.
Yeah, so there's going to be an uptick in that because of Gaza. There's going to be unfortunately, that's the way people see it. So now they're going to be angry at, they're going to be angry at Israel, which means they'll probably be angry at Jews, which is the wrong way to look at it. But anyway, the same as 9/11. I mean, how many Muslims were involved in that? I don't know. But they, like very few, but of course, Muslims took it on the chin for that one. anyway, so here's a recent report from the Macdonald-Laurier Institute citing data tabled by the government in the House of Commons found 238 arson attacks on churches and other religious institutions from 21 to 23, up from 152 in the prior year before that. So it's up significantly. But a lot of them are abandoned churches too. They point out. So there's a lot more and more churches. They don't have enough people to have a congregation, so they unite with another church. CBC News probed that some church burnings carried out between 21 and 23 and found 33 such incidents. 14 of the fires took place on First Nations Reserve, and 13 were small and rural towns. So, of course, when the Indigenous people read about the abuse that came from the church people in residential schools, what do you think they're going to do? They might attack a church, which they did do. They attacked a church. One of the demonstrations a couple of years ago, they burned down a church as they felt it was representative of the church's influences in residential schools. So there's an attack on a church, not attack on Christianity per se, but as a representative building. Of course, none of this makes any sense, but it does into the minds of the attacker. The Catholic Civil Rights League, which maintains a church tax database, has documented dozens of suspicious incidents in recent years. But Poilievre said this anti-Christian hate needs to stop, and he pledged to get, okay, is there a whole lot of anti-Christian hate out there? Has anyone seen it? Anti-Catholic hate because of the pedophilia?
Yeah, but even that's rare.
Go ahead.
Even that is rare, though. That's been going on for years, and there has been instances of church burnings, but anti-Catholic has been on the rise, as you said, because of that. It's rare. It's very rare. It's rare compared to those of synagogues and mosques.
Well, it very well seems to be. Like now, synagogues, there are more synagogues than there are mosques. They're more well established. Anti-Semitism is a long tradition in the West, so that's very hard to weed people away from. So even at the best of times, we find there's a certain level of anti-Semitism where people knock down their, might victimize their synagogue or their graveyards or whatever. That, of course, is blown up with Islamic phobia too. Islamic temples and places are being attacked. There was a Sikh place that was a temple attacked after 9/11 because whoever wanted to attack Muslims didn't know the difference between Muslims and Sikhs and attacked the Sikh temple instead. So yeah, you have this kind of outrage going on, and you can understand there's an outrage against Israeli IDF and Netanyahu, but that so people take it out on local Jewish institutions. They did the same thing against Muslims after 9/11. So
yeah. Well, in fact,
people do that. But what Poilievre is saying is this thing directed towards Christians. I don't find anti-Christian hatred anywhere. I've never even heard of it. Basically, very much anti-Christian hatred, other than for specific facts. That even Catholics were appalled by what the pedophilia scandal is, but they didn't lose faith in their church. They lose faith in their leaders, but they didn't lose faith in the church. They still went to church.
But again, he's pointing out that Okay, what they're basically saying, according to media reports, at least 4 churches have been set ablaze so far this year, including vacant churches in Winnipeg, Newfoundland, a Catholic church in rural Saskatchewan, and a joint Anglican Lutheran church in Manitoba. But again,
is that general hatred, though? Is that general hatred, or is it just a handful of pyromaniacs?
Yeah,
you find a lot of buildings going up in flames right here in town. Are they anti-building hate groups? No, they're just dick-ass pyromaniacs. Maybe some are arsons hired by the insurance by somebody who needs the insurance.
Well, the other question about vacant churches, vacant churches are always unfortunately a target. Vacant churches, one of the things that often is required with a building like a vacant church and why it gets torched is that it's not ideal for a new type of thing that a new developer might want. So torching that building might be the best solution in order that they can buy the land. And we know that goes on. We don't approve of it, but we know it goes on.
Yeah, that happens. That does happen. But the land still belongs to the church and is still tax-free for the church. So if the church wants let's say the United Church of Canada owns a church and somebody torches it, they still own the land and they still can build on that if they please, and they can do it tax-free because it's a religious institution. That is
whoever buys the land can't do it tax-free. If you buy the land, you still have to pay tax on it.
Yeah, and so if you buy it from them and whatever, but there's some chicanery around there like that for sure. I think a lot of it has to do with a lot of people like to see things go up in flames. They think it's a big deal. Like we found lots of buildings here, like the building behind Simon's restaurant, the old Simon's restaurant there. I mean, it was a nice old house back there.
Yeah,
Mr. Simon's had owned. Somebody broke into it and torched it.
Yeah,
I mean, the insurance payback on that house going up couldn't have been a whole lot. So we kind of figured that was done as a lark by some. I can't use the terms on public TV, public radio, but yeah, some lowlifes burned it down just to see it burn down. Yeah, they thought it was a big lark. We find the same thing as farms, like barns or sheds and stuff like that. People will do it. So when you've got an empty church, that is quite a temptation to the sick-minded pyromaniac.
Yeah.
So I do not believe Poilievre. At least in Canada, I don't see any more hatred directed towards Christians than ever before. I don't. I would like to see his proof. He doesn't seem to have proof. I want to know the real proof of that. Like and seriously, a lot of the crimes, like hate crimes towards Jews, you could pretty well believe all that because it's a hit. We have a history of it. You know what I mean? And the hate towards Muslims, of course. Yeah, we have a history of that too. But Christians, tell me how you think that's the truth. Because tell you the truth, the only derogatory thing I ever hear about religion, I hear it. The ideologic arguments against religion, but no hate for it.
That's not hate, though. Ideology discussions on ideology are not hate. That's a whole different thing. That's a whole different thing. And the important thing here is, Dave, that Statistics Canada doesn't support Poilievre's statement.
Yeah, it doesn't. Is he trying to do his own victim narrative thing here to exploit? Yeah. Where is he getting the idea that Christians are being like? I don't see it. Show me some evidence. I'm not saying it's not there, but I haven't seen it. I haven't heard it in conversations. I don't see it on social media or anything like that, you might get, like I said, you don't even hear a lot of criticism of the Catholic Church now after the sort of pedophilia thing has died down, and you've had a couple of popes that actually addressed it and admitted to it. So the pedophilia thing has kind of died down. So there was a rash of hate towards the Catholic Church during that time. And a lot of that hate was from other Catholics that felt betrayed by their church.
Yeah.
So, but Christianity, generally speaking, no, I haven't heard a whole lot of hate towards them. And as you would with Jews and Muslims, I hear froth at the mouth hate about Muslims mostly, and very rarely, once in a while, you'll hear stuff about how Jews control the world and that kind of thing, but which is nuts. But anyway.
Okay, so here's another one. Of course, there are people that would accuse you and I, because we've been talking about the situation in Gaza, of being Jew haters.
Yeah, hardly, because, well, let me point out that most of the information I get about what has gone on and the history of what's gone on here comes from Jews. Comes from Jewish reporters, comes from Jewish commentators, Jewish writers.
And how many times?
Those are the ones that have had the backbone to write what has truly been happening in Israel and how the Palestinians are victimized by the state of Israel.
And
that comes from Jews.
And part of yesterday's story, we were talking about the flotilla that's heading towards Gaza, came from the times of Jerusalem, right?
Yeah. Well, are you now? You get into a situation here where there was a lot of priests and stuff on those. Apparently, if I got that right, there's religious people on those ships. So, do you want to if you're against the flotilla, are you anti-Christian? If you're for the flotilla, are you anti-Jew? That's how stupid it gets.
Yeah.
Let's put it this way. What would be a better argument is I declare a lot of anti-Zionist stuff here. I don't think Zionism is a good political force at all. But being anti-Zionist, according to the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL, according to that, I would be an anti-Semite, because if I'm anti-Zionist, I must be an anti-Semite, and yet the attitudes that I adopt are mostly come from Jewish scholars. So
yeah,
I'm an anti-Semite that gets my anti-Semitic ideas from self-hating Jews.
Yeah, and you've quoted a number of Jewish scholars over the last couple of years in relation to the situation in Gaza.
Ilan Pepe, Miko Peled, Gideon Levy, Noam Chomsky, even,
Yes, yeah.
Norm Finkelstein. Now, none of these guys are probably 100% exactly right, but they're mostly right about everything. So you can pick apart an argument here or there they might have, but overall, and that's why a guy like Ilan Pepe can't even live in Israel.
And you can't accuse them of being anti-Jewish or hating Jewish, because I don't think that applies.
No, it's rather stupid, and I think it's a very, very awkward situation for international Jewry right now, when they have this colonial thing called Israel that required the expulsion of 700 more thousand Palestinians at a time when they had half the population. When Palestine was divided up, the Israelis got half the population. Israelis got half of the land, a little more than half of the land, with only 1/3 of the population.
Yeah.
The other half of the land had to go to 2/3 of the population, and then they'd be pushed out. And that land itself was then taken in the next war, and that population was then further made refugee by pushing them further into places like Gaza and Jordan and places like that. We're at around time, so I will just say that.
Yeah, hang on. Julie Rose has said something here. I would say that there's a case of they are ridiculed and made fun of, which may be seen as hate by some people.
Who's ridiculing? I mean, I don't see demonstrations. You may have a conversation where with a friend or somebody who might roll their eyes at one religion or another, that kind of thing. But I don't see a whole lot of Christian hatred out there.
No,
I don't really do that. And I can't. And a U.S. Marine, an ex-U.S. Marine, driving his truck into a Mormon church, apparently he hated Mormons, is a sign of anti-religion, anti-Christian. He was actually targeting a specific religion, which was the Mormon. Yeah, Pacific sect, which he hated for some reason. And the guy that shot up the Catholic Church, shot children at Catholic Church, was out of his mind, to kill children like that. And what his beef was against, I don't even know if he had a beef against the Catholic Church, but whatever it was due to insanity. So I can't really see this general feeling of.
She says television. That was
television and YouTube and TikTok and all that. What might drive all that up. Yeah. But I can see also in the United States where they have this Christian Zionists and ultra fundamentalist Christians who believe Trump is sent from God, that kind of thing. I could see a lot of resistance to that, but I don't know about hate. We can make fun of them all day long, and that's what we generally do.
Any religion that can't be made fun of really needs to examine itself.
Well, be careful who you make fun of, because anyway. But look, basically speaking, I don't see a whole lot of Christian hate out there.
Well,
it has to be proven to me.
I have to say the people that I've seen make fun of the Christian churches have been devout Christians themselves, and they attack what they see as problems in their own communities by using comedy.
I don't know, but anyway. This is near the end, and I have to mention Gaza. Right now, the flotilla is getting closer to Gaza. We will see what will happen then. Netanyahu and Trump came up with a plan to end the war. I don't think it's any better plan than they did the last time. I think it's just a fake plan. It's just to keep everybody quiet. I don't think Trump has any ability at all to end this war. And the flotilla will have more in effect than 20 Trumps, basically. Trump just cannot stop a war. He couldn't stop Ukraine war. He can't stop this one. He promised to have them done in a matter of days, not even weeks. And it's been months, and he hasn't come close. This is the second or third proposal. And if it goes in discussion, I don't know. The IDF will bomb wherever their discussion is happening to make sure it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And it was pointed out too, again, yesterday, about how Netanyahu allowed, he's going to be in trouble because he allowed money, tons and tons of money to come into Gaza for Hamas, because it was important for him to have a bulwark against the Palestinian Authority he wanted to divide the Palestinians, and to give money to a weirdo group like Hamas was just up his alley, because he knew that they would fanatically fight the Palestinian Authority, which is secular. Unfortunately, they fanatically fight him too. So he's in trouble for making them strong. It was a bad move strategically. So without further ado, I bid you adieu.